So this quote up here is from one of our Canadian activators named Zita Cobb, and she has a place called Fogo Island Inn that is one of the most spectacular spots on the planet in Newfoundland. And I've been thinking a lot about this quote. And then I had a dream about 10 days ago. I think it was about 10 days ago, of this woman that I met many years ago in the living room of Suzanne Beagle. So Suze, one of my good friends in London, had a dinner party when I was there, and there was this woman in the room who was just like white light. I just looked across the room, I'm like, oh my God, who is that? I have to meet this woman. And it turns out it was Dr. Elizabeth Lindsey. So I had this dream that she walked across the stage in bare feet to talk to us. And I thought, oh my God, maybe she's supposed to be here. And it's super crazy because it's like a week away from this gala, but I'm going to call her. And so I did, and she said yes. And then she got sick. And she said, but I'll do whatever it takes. Can you figure out how to make this happen? And we're like, how about Skype? And so she is going to be joining us on Skype. So in just one moment, just a little bit about Elizabeth, if you don't know who she is. She's the first Polynesian explorer and female fellow in the history of the National Geographic Society. First woman explorer. How cool is that? Do we need an explorer right now or what, right? And we had this amazing conversation around, she's just written a foreword for a big book on extreme innovation from this very well-known person. And she said, why did you ask me to be writing the foreword for your book? And she said, you're an explorer. Innovation is an exploration. She has an incredible story. You can look at her TED Talks online, but she's going to join us now and share some stories about women's wisdom from ancient cultures around the world. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you, Vicki. Oh, listening to the women that were speaking just prior to this really touched me so deeply. And I am taking off from some of the notes and I'm going to riff on what I heard because it absolutely moved me. And I only wish that I could be with all of you. My God, the inspiration and the power that was coming through just listening to these words moved me to such an extent that I want to share with you something that I learned from an old woman in New Zealand in the bush country this last July. There is something called ruahine. Ruahine. It's from an ancient Maori tribe, and it means a woman who walks in both worlds. And that is exactly who we are and why we are here at this time, in this hour. We are walking between two worlds, the world of the seen and the world of the unseen, the world of the known and the world of the unknown, the world of the familiar and the world of the uncharted. We are journeying without maps right now. And more than ever, the world needs us to be present and powerful. Present and powerful. So in these 15 minutes that I have with you, and I am so sorry that I'm not able to see you, because I'd love nothing better than to look into your eyes and tell you that I am not here to teach you anything that you don't already know. We are here simply to remember who we really are, who we really are. Because when we know that, we step into our full presence and our magnificence. And from that point of power, nothing but nothing can stand in our way. From that point of power and presence, we need strive for nothing, because when we know how powerful we are, we can step into a room and without even speaking words, our sheer presence will shift the resonance in any room. When we know power to that extent, it is the ultimate game changer. I've had the unbelievable privilege of spending my life with elders and mystics and masters throughout the world that have taught me what it means to chant the universe, that have taught me what it means to stand in silence, in presence, and in my power, and knowing that when I am embodied to the core of my being, everything around me changes. And you know this is true because in those moments that you have done the same, you have felt that. You know what it's like to be with someone who whines and makes a victim of himself. It disempowers. It drains all of our energy and life force from us. However, when we are in our full presence and our magnificence, it elevates everyone around us and it is transcendent. And that's what the world needs right now. We don't need to push and strive and waste and squander our life force. What we do, what the navigators and my teachers have taught me, is that we harness our life force and bring it in such a way. When we are on the canoe sailing, when we're on canoe sailing, we do not use maps or instruments. We navigate by the rising and setting of stars. We navigate by the waves and the winds. We navigate by our intuition. And that's exactly what we are doing now because we are Wahine. We carry this ancient wisdom. All of us are indigenous to someplace, and we carry this ancient wisdom with us in whatever room we enter, into whatever meeting we enter, into whatever presentation we are making, into our bedrooms and the boardrooms and all points in between. We carry our power, our magnificence, and our life force with us. And to play smaller than that is not the truth of who we are. Ancient and ancestral knowledge and wisdom is really very sophisticated technology. It's quantum mechanics and quantum physics. One of my favorite quotes is this by James Allen. It says, "We do not attract that which we want." Say this with me. We do not attract that which we want. We attract that which we are. We attract that which we are. When we really understand that as a sisterhood, as a strong, powerful, magnificent, glorious, infinite sisterhood, when we are in that place, all we know is generosity. And we cannot be generous until we are full within ourselves. And we must be that. We must be that for ourselves. We must be that for our daughters and our sons and our lovers and our spouses and our parents and our friends and everyone we come in contact with. It's incumbent upon us, and we must do it for ourselves. And from that point of power, that is when we can step into our generosity. So what I'm going to teach you in these few moments is a process that seems deceptively simple, yet it's incredibly powerful. And I'd like to share a story with you that precedes it because this will put it into context. My mentor while I was doing my doctoral research was considered the greatest celestial navigator in the world. He could sail thousands of miles of open ocean without the use of maps or instruments. He could taste the water when we were thousands of miles away from land, and based on its salinity, tell us how far we were from land. He could look at the subtlest changes on the horizon and predict tidal waves 4 days in advance. Now, by an untrained eye, this seems quite miraculous, yet this is their natural state. And in many ways, you and I are navigators because we're sailing across life's water, and there are times that the conditions are shifting. So this is one of the, probably the most profound lessons he ever taught me. We were watching the stars one night, And what happens when you're predicting weather conditions, you look at the horizon to the first hint of light on the horizon in order to know what the weather will be 4 days in advance. So we were determining by sitting at this lookout, waiting for the sun just to peek over the horizon so we would know when we were going to launch our canoes. We were sitting there and it was a still night. It was absolutely breathless. And my teacher Mao said to me, "Where is the wind?" And I tried to feel it on my face and tried to look for it in the shimmering of a leaf, and nothing was moving. And there was cloud cover. It was one of the stillest nights I'd ever experienced. And I said, "There is no wind." And he looked at me and he said, "Where is the wind?" And I tried to find it again because I'd been studying with him for so many years, and I knew what a privilege and rarity it was to be his student. And I was one of the few females that he was training. And I said, "Papa, there is no wind." And then he said this, and I want you to remember it. He said, "Close your eyes. Close your eyes, because only then can you see clearly." When we close our eyes and cease to look outside ourselves for answers, everything we seek is waiting for us within. Our internal guidance system, our intuition, our instincts, our deepest knowing is always the most sophisticated compass of all. And yet it's one that we rarely refer to. We're constantly looking outside ourselves, especially in this Western society. We're constantly looking outside for advice, asking advice of friends and strangers and therapists, astrologists and intuitives, and the list goes on. But as we begin to really cultivate and exercise this muscle like we would any other muscle, we become strong and we become deeply, deeply wise women. And that's exactly what the world needs. Can you imagine taking that degree of knowing, that mastery of knowing, and then embedding that and integrating that into everything that you do? Mao could go into a room because he was so aware of his environment on the ocean. He could go into a room of 1,000 people and read people like weather conditions. And so to study with him for 10 years, to be able to go into rooms and be absolutely silent and watch people and be able to know them deeply by bearing witness and watching the subtlest behaviors is a real mastery. And I'd love for all of us, and I would encourage you, as I teach you this exercise, to take it with you into everything that you do, to apply it willingly and deliberately and consciously. It takes just 90 seconds, and trust me, it feels so simple, as if you're almost not doing anything. But as you do this, and you can do this in a room of many people and no one will know it, and that's part of mastery, is that we're developing a state of awareness, a heightened state of awareness, that we can read conditions wherever we are. So you no longer need to feel as if you're adrift at times, not knowing what's around the next corner, not knowing what to do about your finances or your job or your relationships, but that you start to cultivate this mastery of knowing, this way of attending and intending to your intuition and instinct. So now I'm going to ask you, I know that you're seated at dinner, but I'm going to ask you to put both feet firmly planted on the ground. Sit up with your spines erect. This will take just 90 seconds. And before you do this, I'll tell you first what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and then I'm going to lead you into 3 conscious breaths. And a conscious breath is, you'll take an inhalation of 3 counts, an exhalation of 6 counts. So your exhalation is twice as long as your inhalation. We'll do that 3 times. And then I'll lead you through a very, very brief guidance that's so simple that you will remember this. And as I was telling Vicki, while I was preparing for these remarks tonight, I realized that I have spent my life advising boards and leaders around the world And it dawned on me that because we have this technology, I want to be able to really work and be of service to many more people. So I'm understanding now, to an even greater extent, my commitment has always been to serve the world, but especially now, because we all need it so much. There is a deep longing for wisdom. And so I invite you, and I will make this offer to you, that if there is anyone that's interested, Vicki, if you can share my email address, it's very easy. We can do this at the end. But I want to be able to make sure that people feel empowered, that they feel whole, that they feel strong, so that they go out into the world in that state of awareness and presence and power to touch many lives, because this is exactly why we're here right now, to do exactly what we're doing right now. And so on that note, would you gently close your eyes? And we will begin with 3 conscious breaths, and I will guide you along each step. First breath, breathe in, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last time, inhale, 2, 3, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With your feet planted on the earth, imagine yourself rooted into this planet that is so ancient, so grounding, and completely infinite. A source of everything you need. This will ground you and nourish you and give you everything you require. And with the top of your head and your crown open to the heavens, you will be inspired and filled with shimmering light to grant you insight and clarity and deep knowing. So imagine both the earth and the heavens become your source, your life force to feed you and nourish you. And anytime you need to, you come to these 3 deep breaths and full exhalations. Ground yourself and lift yourself up to the stars, knowing that you are a part of all that is infinite and limitless. It is who you are. It is who we have always been before we forgot. Remember this. Remember your limitlessness. Remember what it feels like to be in this field of infinite possibility. It is your birthright. And so it is. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes. When we are truly rooted in our deepest power, when we are lifted up to the heavens, we become giants in this world, in a world that has forgotten and has been playing small. The world doesn't need us to play small. The world needs us more than ever to be our fullest potential. It doesn't need us to break anyone down. It needs us to be transcendent. Given the uncertainty of these times and the great divide, let us be bigger than that. Let us be masters of our own lives, that we become unperturbed, that we walk with calm courage in the world, because that's what the world needs. I will close with this story that for me was an act of radical generosity, one that changed my life in ways that I can't even express in words. The year was 2007. I had just come from a meeting at the National Geographic Society. I was leading an expedition, about to lead an expedition that was the most harrowing and perhaps the most dangerous I have ever led. It was to a remote island in the middle of Polynesia, in the middle of Micronesia, in the Pacific Ocean. An island so small that the National Geographic had never been there. I was the first woman anthropologist to ever land on the island. I was leading a group of 9 men, mostly because I needed them to carry 5,000 pounds of provisions. I was funding it myself. It cost me almost $250,000. But my mentor lived there and he was dying, and he had given me 10 years of his life and all of his mastery. And I felt indebted to him to go to record this ceremony, this initiation of navigators. So I negotiated with the Micronesian government to get there. And this was my last meeting with the National Geographic, and they laid all of their maps out on the floor, and they said, Elizabeth, can you show us where the island is? And I thought, oh my God, here I was, 50 years old in 2007. I'm going to be 61 in April. And I had just gone through the loss of my husband, who had just passed away months earlier, in my arms. I felt vulnerable. I felt terrified. Felt overwhelmed, for sure. Leading an expedition, asking a 9-member crew to travel with me, to trust me enough to leave their families and be completely disconnected from the world, because we were traveling to a place that had absolutely nothing, no signal, we used a satellite phone, but we could barely get signal. We were on cargo ships to get there. It truly was harrowing. The boat coming back made the African Queen look like a 5-star experience. It was hard. And so I left my final meeting from the National Geographic, and I got on this metro, and I was just filled with trepidation, just riddled with anxiety, knowing that I was flying out of Washington, headed back to Hawaii to board a plane that then would take us by cargo ship to this very small island, a cargo ship, negotiated with the Micronesian government. Every step felt huge to me and overwhelming. And so I got on this metro, and it was completely empty. And this woman, about 70 years old, gets on and comes and sits down right beside me. The entire area was open, and she sits right beside me and starts talking. And I thought, oh my goodness. I'm just cranking through everything that's on my mind. And she starts talking about how she's going to Mexico for the first time and so forth and so on. And I thought, I just would love some time to just be alone and try to figure this out. And as we're sitting there and she's talking, I started to move outside myself gradually. And then she said, I've never been to Mexico City. And she was talking about how excited she was to go. And she said, I'm a grandmother now. And then she looked at me and she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm getting ready to go on this long trip, and I'm really scared. And sometimes, it's easy to be vulnerable in the front of strangers. And I said, I'm going on I'm leading this expedition, and I just pray that we all come back safely. And she stopped and she looked at me. And she said, I'll never be able to do what you do. I'll never travel to the places that you see. But when you are scared, I will give you my courage. And I will be with you always when you're afraid. I don't know that woman's name. And I will never see her face again. But I have never made an expedition where she wasn't with me. And that is radical generosity. And that's what we're all capable of being for one another. And so I close with that. And I wish you everything, mostly to remember how powerful and truly magnificent you are.
Is Elizabeth, are you there?
I am.
You have a standing ovation here.
Vicki, would you share my email, or I'm happy to, with the group if there's anybody that would like to be in touch with me. I've never done this before. I've spoken a lot, but I've never ever just been so ferocious and committed to wanting. I mean, I heard the women speaking just before I joined you, and I thought, I want to be present in their lives. I want to show up for them, and I want to keep them strong and support them. So if you would share my email is very easy. It's just elizabeth@elizabethlindsey.com.
Yes.
So if there's anything that I can do for anyone, call on me.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and we will. And one of the things that we're talking to Elizabeth about is creating a series that she leads of wisdom from our elders that we will do as a webinar. So more on that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Bon voyage for your trip.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.